So somebody will get to send me an email and tell me who I should talk to about the money, right?
Oh, yeah. Being printed as we speak.
Thank you. I've now got my other hat on as the President of the Akaroa Ratepayers and Residents Association. Firstly, congratulations on the fact that the latest survey showed that public satisfaction does indeed seem to be rising for the council's operations, at least in this part of the city. So keep that up because it's going well. But I'm going to talk about an aspect which isn't going well. And I could talk about a lot of things this year, but this is a single topic submission. We're talking about the Akaroa wastewater situation. I'm sure you've been following the Akaroa wastewater project to some extent. You probably get your information from council reports, staff reports, newspaper articles. Tyrone, of course, knows what's happening. He's got his feet on the ground out there. I'm going to tell you how it looks from the Akaroa residents' point of view. I think I'm qualified to speak on this. I'm a civil engineer. I've been on working parties, I've attended meetings, I've made submissions, I've sat through the whole thing for more than a decade. Unfortunately, there are not too many kind words that can be said about the council's attitude and actions during all this. Council have doggedly pursued a scheme that even from the outset looked like it was fundamentally flawed. Even in the most optimistic scenario, it wasn't going to achieve its stated goal of eliminating discharges to the harbour. And during the entire process, the views of the local community have been largely ignored. And in a final move, council is spending ratepayers' money planting out over 100,000 seedlings for an unwanted patch of bush, even while the consent process is still underway. You know, we know that you've spent millions of dollars on this. We don't know the exact number, we've all lost track. It looks to us like a lot of it's been wasted. The scheme has been driven by flawed ideology. There are dubious assumptions, particularly about population growth. It lacks any real strategic vision, and the technical analysis that underpins the whole lot is pretty shaky. Recently, the consenting process has been put on hold. The primary reason is stated to be the government's proposed new wastewater standards. Well, that's convenient, that's a convenient excuse, but it's not the main reason, we don't think. So who does the council really have to thank for being extracted from an impending train crash? It's pretty clear to us that the real reason for the change of heart is the very exceptional work that's been done by the Friends of Banks Peninsula and their supporter groups by providing sound technical advice and proper analysis that has laid bare the flaws in the proposed scheme. The council scheme came up against a wall of common sense and ground to a halt. To achieve that, Friends of Banks Peninsula had to raise around $100,000 from the local community. That was used to fund the necessary expert witnesses and legal professionals. And in direct opposition, the council has spent many times that sum extracted from the pockets of ratepayers. The same people, in many cases, having both pockets emptied. That's $100,000 sucked out of the local pool of funding. That's a lot of money for our community. That money could have gone to good causes, philanthropic, conservation, arts, community projects, could have even gone to civil defence. Instead, it's had to be spent engaging engineers and lawyers and such, so it's gone from the local community. And as well, our rates keep going up because council spent many times as much trying to spin the counter story. There is no fairness in this. And I'm not pointing the finger at any individuals because the people concerned were just obeying the last command. This is a systemic failure and a strategic failure by the Christchurch City Council. Massive unnecessary expenditure at a time when you should be focusing on making rates more realistic and affordable. But there's an opportunity to repair some of the damage and regain some level of trust with the Akaroa community. And I'll say, I'm not a member of the Friends of Banks Peninsula. That's a different organisation, but I can recognise an injustice when I see it. So we call on the council to reimburse Friends of Banks Peninsula for the expenses that they have incurred in engaging experts and lawyers to oppose the council's resource consent applications. They were doing the work that council should have been doing all along. And you are going to find out in the long run that you have been saved from a lot of expense and embarrassment that would have happened if the proposed scheme had been taken to completion. So, council, a lot of talk about community engagement, resilience, partnerships and all that. That's all the words. But we want our money back so we can put it to good and proper uses.
Good. Right. Aaron.
So native trees aside, because even no matter what happens, that's good for the environment that those trees are being planted. So that part aside, with your civil engineer,
Pretty expensive tree planting exercise if you think it's just going to be good for the environment. But yes, go on.
well, yeah, but not as a lot cheaper than street trees. But that aside, they're a couple of $1,000 each now. But your civil engineer's hat on, what would your solution for Akaroa be?
In the very long term, you need to address the shortage of fresh water, because that's probably going to be a bigger problem, in fact. So in the fullness of time, you will go to a complete recycling situation. In the shorter term, the deep bore injection will almost certainly be the preferred option once you've done this next round of analysis. And if that's not the case, then a mid-harbour outfall would be absolutely fine as far as most residents are concerned, provided you treat the water to the appropriate level. Well, there's different levels. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
And
carry on, Aaron.
On the one you said about the water shortage, what do you know about what water's under the ground in Akaroa?
They've been trying to find more water and drilling test bores ever since I moved to the area, which was 30 years ago. And they have consistently come up with very poor results.
Have you ever seen Dave Clement's results? No, not
personally.
Because I have. And he shows evidence of water, which is interesting.
Well, it'd be good if the council could actually produce it out of the tap,
Yeah, for not very much money, but we're not going there for some reason.
Okay, Pauline, please, and then Tyrone.
Yeah, so as part of the options in the whole process, last time the council did do a lot of deep bore injection tests and found that the land wasn't suitable.
They drilled 2 test bores in the worst possible place and found that wasn't suitable.
Right.
That's the opinion of experts that we've discussed it with.
Okay, because it was too rocky, wasn't it? It didn't absorb.
Well, you're drilling a test bore on the top of a hill. You expect it to be one of the harder, rockier bits. That's why it hasn't eroded away.
Right. And as far as the outfall option, we weren't really allowed to progress that because we couldn't get a consent from ECAN. So it's not really council.
Well, you were told to go away and consider all the other alternatives,
Okay,
which you've done.
Yeah. Tyrone?
Cool, thanks, Harry. Yeah, geez, what an issue this is. So I think I didn't quite hear. Did you say a mid-harbour outfall? Is that what you said?
But personally, yeah, I'd be absolutely fine with that, provided the treatment standard is adequate,
Right, thank you.
and that is supported by the majority of residents.
Right, but obviously you'll be aware of the mana whenua view on that.
Yep.
Do you have a view on an ocean outfall as well?
Yeah, well, that'd be absolutely fine too. It just seems a wee bit pointless.
Okay, no, thank you. And just finally, just in terms of filtration and filtering out microplastics and that kind of thing, does the association have a view on that? Because I know that's something very important to the
No, we
food
don't really have. I mean, it's a technical area. We don't really have a view on that. We would trust wastewater engineers to be able to recommend the appropriate standard if they were asked.
Sorry, just one final question, Your Worship. So the wastewater standards, the process that we're going through with the government, do you have a view on how that might impact the quality of the wastewater that's,
No, I'm sorry, I don't have a view on that.
Oh, you don't have a view? Okay, no worries. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Harry. That's good for your input. Thank you.
Okay.
Right. We have got, the next one we've got is Penny Carnaby, but she's just stuck in traffic. She'll be